A herd of alien dragons approached the human farmer for help, but the sun over Roth 9 was a stubborn red giant, bathing the world in a warm, rust-colored glow. The soil was the color of burnt copper, and crops here grew stubbornly, as if there was any being farmed at all. Isaac Carter had been working the land for nearly 15 years, ever since the Interstellar Colonization Authority granted him rights to this lonely patch of soil at the edge of nowhere. He had chosen it deliberately, far from Earth, far from the wars, far from the endless noise of human civilization. Here, he planted genetically engineered maize and pulse grain that could survive Aroth 9's long droughts and toxic storms. His only companions were a few biomodded sheep, the rustle of alien wind, and the occasional whisper of a comm signal from orbit. He had thought he would live here in peace, just a man in his land. He never expected dragons. The beginning, it started with tremors. Isaac was bent over, repairing one of the irrigation lines when the ground shook beneath him. At first, he thought it was another quake. Aroth 9's crust was unstable, prone to rumbles. But then came the sound, a deep, resonant rumble like thunder rolling across the sky. He looked up. Over the ridge, massive silhouettes emerged. Creatures with scales that glistened like liquid silver, wings vast enough to blot out the crimson sun. Their long necks undulated like serpents, and their tails lashed against the copper earth. Isaac froze. His first thought was, dragons. His second was, I'm hallucinating. But they were real. A dozen of them approached in a herd-like formation, their talons carving furrows in the soil. Their nostrils flared, sending plumes of vapor into thin air. They were not Earth dragons from legend. These were alien, otherworldly, with bioluminescent markings along their flanks and eyes like polished obsidian. The largest of them stepped forward, its wings folding close, its head lowering until its snout was only meters from Isaac's battered irrigation pump. And then it spoke, not in words exactly, but in a mental impression that struck his mind like a thunderclap. Images, sounds, feelings, a desperate plea, carried not through air but through thought. Help us. Isaac staggered back, nearly dropping his wrench. Help you? You can talk. The dragon's massive head tilted. The impressions grew clearer. We know your kind. Farmers. Healers of land. We are dying. You can save us. Isaac's throat went dry. I'm no doctor. I just grow crops. What do you expect me to do for a herd of alien dragons? But the images that poured into his mind were undeniable. Eggs cracking too soon. Hatchlings failing to breathe. Fields of withered plants where the dragons once fed. Their water holes drying to dust. The herd was starving. The middle. Isaac didn't sleep that night. He sat on the porch of his farmhouse, watching the herd settle in the valley below. Their massive bodies glowed faintly in the dark, like living constellations. Their breathing rose and fell in slow, mournful waves. He poured himself cheap whiskey from a recycled glass bottle and muttered, "This isn't my problem," but he knew it already was. Over the next week, the dragons stayed. They didn't threaten him, didn't destroy his farm. Instead, they simply waited. Every so often, one would glance at him with those enormous black eyes, and he would feel that desperate plea again, like a pressure in his chest, urging him to do something. Reluctantly, Isaac began to investigate. He took soil samples from a valley where the dragons nested. He checked the water table. He examined the alien flora they grazed upon. The results were grim. Aroth 9's ecosystem was collapsing. The red giant star had grown hotter in recent decades, and the delicate balance of planet's biosphere was failing. The native plants the dragons relied on were dying off. Without those plants, the dragons couldn't metabolize the rare minerals in their diet. Without those minerals, their eggs couldn't develop properly. They were facing extinction. Isaac slammed his hand against the lab table in frustration. I can't fix an entire planet. I'm one man with a farm and some old machinery. That night, he dreamed of dragons screaming as their eggs withered to dust. A risky solution. The next morning, Isaac made a choice. He pulled up the genetic schematics for his crops. The maize and pulse grain were engineered to thrive in harsh worlds like this one. With modifications, they might be altered further to produce the minerals the dragons needed, but it was risky. The authorities strictly controlled genetic modification. Unauthorized alterations were illegal, punishable by heavy fines, or worse, revocation of settlement rights. And yet, when he looked down into the valley and saw hatchlings struggling to rise, only to collapse against their mother's claws, he knew he had to try. He spent weeks in his workshop, splicing alien DNA into his crop strains. He cursed at his failing equipment, begged his worn-out bioprinter to hold together, and burned through every reserve of fuel and nutrients he had stored. The dragons brought him offerings in return, giant crystals unearthed from the mountains, carcasses of alien beasts, even a wing feather that shimmered like 1,000 rainbows. They did not understand human currency, but they understood trade. At last, Isaac produced the first seeds. He planted them in a test field. Within days, green shoots burst from the copper soil, stronger than any crop he'd grown before. When he ground the leaves into mash and fed them to a sickly hatchling, the change was immediate. The creature's dull scales brightened. Its breathing steadied. For the first time, Isaac heard the mental impression of hope. The herd roared as one, a sound that shook the mountains. The price of hope, but success brought danger. One night, the sky above Isaac's farm lit with streaks of fire, authority patrol ships. They had detected unauthorized genetic modification from orbit. A squad of inspectors arrived, armed and stern. They demanded answers, demanded samples, demanded to know why his crops contained illegal alien splices. Isaac stood his ground. I did what I had to do. The dragons need this. Without it, they'll die. The lead inspector sneered. They're animals, dangerous ones at that. If they can't survive, that's nature's way. You're interfering with planetary balance. Isaac's fist clenched. Nature's way? You bureaucrats terraformed this world for farming. You already destroyed its balance. At least I'm trying to save something that belongs here. The inspector raised his calm to call for enforcement. But then the ground trembled. The herd had arrived. Dozens of dragons surrounded the farm, their eyes glowing, their wings unfurled. Their collective thoughts pressed into humans' minds with undeniable force. He is ours. He saved us. Harm him, and we will burn your ships from the sky. The inspectors faltered. No weapon they carried could match a dragon's fury. In the end, they left, warning Isaac that it made enemies in the authority, but unwilling to challenge the herd's protection. The ending. Seasons passed. Isaac's modified crops spread across the valley, feeding the herd. The dragons grew stronger, their hatchlings thriving where once they had withered. The land itself seemed to heal, the copper soil enriched by the new plants. Isaac, once a solitary farmer, found himself the unlikely guardian of an entire species. The dragons came to him not just for food, but for counsel. They shared with him their ancient memories, visions of when their kind had soared through alien skies long before humans arrived. He learned that they were not beasts, but a people, an ancient intelligence that spoke not with words, but with shared thought and feeling. They had chosen him as their ally, their bridge to the future. One evening, as the red giant sun dipped low, Isaac sat on his porch again. A young dragon, no larger than a horse, padded up beside him and laid its glowing head in his lap. He stroked its scales, feeling the warmth of its life. He whispered, "Guess I'm not so alone anymore." Above, the rest of the herd circled in the crimson sky, their wings painting shadows across the land. The world was still harsh, still dangerous, but no longer empty. The man who had once come here to escape humanity had instead found a new family, one born of fire, scale, and trust. And when the red giant flared brighter, when storms swept across the plains, the herd would roar in defiance, and Isaac would stand among them, the farmer who had given dragons a future.